A young man sits anxiously in front of a computer, seemingly pleading for something until a notification appears on the screen. It's an acceptance letter to the mechanical engineering program at the University of Technology, confirming that Kim Yoon-ho has been admitted. Overjoyed, Kim Yoon-ho exclaims the news to his mother. However, his mother's expression isn't very enthusiastic. Others pass the exam on their first attempt, as did his brother. Displeased, Kim Yoon-ho argues that as a nuisance, he will be moving to Seoul, and he hopes his mother would support his living expenses there. His mother suggests he live with his brother in Seoul instead of renting a place. Kim Yoon-ho panics, saying that would be inconvenient for him, his brother, and sister-in-law, but his mother replies that they have already agreed. Kim Yoon-ho tries to bargain with his mother to let him rent a place, but of course she disagrees and sends him back to his room. Days pass, and under the high sun with blue skies overhead, Kim Yoon-ho arrives in Seoul. He realizes that his brother has become very successful. Much older now, his brother is known throughout the neighborhood as a talented individual who earned scholarships in college and became a leading corporate researcher after graduation. A year ago, he married his sister-in-law, and they now live a warm and happy life. They recently had a baby, whom Kim Yoon-ho has never met due to the distance. Worried about how he'll fit into their life, Kim Yoon-ho rings the doorbell, and his beautiful sister-in-law promptly welcomes him. She invites him inside and shows him to his room. Exhausted from traveling since early morning, Kim Yoon-ho decides to rest immediately. After a nap, Kim Yoon-ho groggily searches for the bathroom and accidentally sees his sister-in-law breastfeeding. Shocked, both quickly turn away. Flustered, Kim Yoon-ho enters the bathroom. Later, he tells his sister-in-law he will take a walk outside. She reminds him to be back by 8 p.m. for dinner. Sitting on a park bench, Kim Yoon-ho broods over the earlier incident, feeling that such awkward situations shouldn't happen. Lost in thought, Kim Yoon-ho realizes that many people exercise in this neighborhood, sensing the comfort of life here, which is quite different from where he used to live. He watches a beautiful girl jogging by, marveling at the sight. Returning to the apartment, he finds that his brother is already home, who tells him to make himself comfortable and treat it as his own home. At the same time, his sister-in-law has prepared dinner, and everyone begins to sit down at the dining table. Kim Yoon-ho declares he will eat heartily, complimenting his brother and sister-in-law on living a happy and harmonious life. However, his sister-in-law corrects him, saying that it's rare for his brother to be home since he came back early today because of Kim Yoon-ho's visit. His brother quickly explains that he often has to stay late at work, and asks Kim Yoon-ho to help look after his sister-in-law when he's not around. Kim Yoon-ho gladly agrees. Having napped earlier, Kim Yoon-ho finds himself wide awake at night, and decides to get up to go to the bathroom. As he passes by his brother and sister-in-law's room, he hears sounds coming from inside. Early the next morning, Kim Yoon-ho steps outside, thinking about how he couldn't sleep at all. He slaps himself to calm down. Then his thoughts shift to meeting and befriending lively girls of his age at university, which excites him even more. In class, he diligently takes notes, but realizes only later in the day from class time to break time to the party that he is in the mechanical engineering department, dominated by males. Lamenting that the University of Technology has a ratio of 10 men to every woman. Frustrated, he suddenly sees a familiar face, the girl jogging in the evening, whom he had also seen the previous day. Thinking it might be fate, he decides to greet her. But just as he speaks, she jogs past him. He thinks he might have imagined too much. Back at home, his sister-in-law, who had been idly watching TV and feeling down, perks up when she hears someone returning. She greets Kim Yoon-ho with a smile, and he shyly responds. His sister-in-law asks if he has had dinner, and he replies that he went out drinking with friends. She cheerfully mentions that it must have been fun since he also played a game like Bamsum. Kim Yoon-ho smiles awkwardly, admitting it wasn't that interesting, thinking to himself that it's because the group was all male. Sensing she might be prying too much and he might be tired, she asks if he's all right. And he assures her he's fine but asks why his brother hasn't returned yet. She sighs and tells him that his brother won't be able to come home tonight, adding that it's always like this. Finally, she reminds him to go to bed early. In his room, Kim Yoon-ho changes and lies on his bed, closing his eyes to think. He turns over, hugging his pillow, and wonders how his sister-in-law can be so beautiful. After a while, feeling thirsty, he gets up to drink some water. The next morning, when Yoon-ho enters the classroom, he hears the murmurs of his classmates. They are talking about the unexpected appearance of a goddess in their department, wondering why they hadn't seen her on the first day. Yoon-ho, still confused, looks up and sees the girl in front of him. He immediately recognizes her as the jogging girl from the apartment complex. Though he's not entirely sure, his eyes light up, and he exclaims that they really must be fated. Throughout the class, he keeps glancing at her, and they end up walking the same way after class. She notices him too but says nothing. After a while, he thinks it's a coincidence that they are in the same department and year. At the end of the day, as she stands up, he wonders if she will head home now. He ends up walking the same path as her, one behind the other, thinking to himself that this is definitely not stalking, but merely sharing the same route home. While waiting at the bus station and later sitting on the bus, he maintains a distance and looks away, not wanting to stare at her. When they reach the entrance to the residential area, he wonders if he should say hello. But she unexpectedly starts the conversation first. She recognizes that they are in the same department and mentions that she first noticed he didn't seem like a stalker. And second, she had seen him around the complex, so she guessed he lived there too. Hearing her say this and then approach him makes him shyly reply that he has just moved in. She comments on the coincidence and introduces herself as Eubora, suggesting they should greet each other when they see each other around. Seeing her extend her hand, Kim Yoon-ho grasps it and shyly scratches his head as he introduces himself as Kim Yoon-ho. Thus, the two strike up a conversation. Bora mentions that she had seen him when she was jogging, and he admits that he noticed her jogging when he first moved in, marveling at how miraculous this seemed. Upon arriving home, he announces his return, and his sister-in-law immediately inquires about his day, noting that the baby is already asleep in the crib. Seeing Kim Yoon-ho so cheerful that he seems on the verge of singing, his sister-in-law probes further, curious about his day at school since she's been feeling quite bored at home. The two then engage in a lively chat. Hearing about this serendipitous meeting, his sister-in-law is astonished and expresses a playful envy towards him. Kim Yoon-ho, feeling a bit awkward about the envy, changes the subject and inwardly criticizes his brother for coming home late again. His sister-in-law remarks that his brother won't be home tonight either, noting that it's a lot even for him to come home twice a week. Kim Yoon-ho criticizes his brother for being too neglectful despite his busy job. Later, the baby wakes up crying from hunger, and the sister-in-law picks up the child, responding to Kim Yoon-ho's earlier remarks by saying his brother must be tired too, and tells him to go shower and rest. She goes into the room and closes the door to feed the baby, sighing deeply as she wonders when her husband will finally get a break. Kim Yoon-ho goes to his room, pondering his brother's work ethic, knowing that he strives to be the best, but that also means he's rarely home. Kim Yoon-ho wonders what he could do to help his sister-in-law, thinking maybe he could invite her to go jogging together, and then, tired, he drifts off to sleep. He wakes up a while later, debating whether to drink water before bed as it might make him need to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. But not drinking might also wake him up due to thirst. Either way, he can't sleep well. He decides to get up for a drink. As Kim Yoon-ho hears a noise from his sister-in-law's room, he worries and rushes in without knocking. He asks if she is okay and finds her lying in bed in great discomfort, apparently suffering from a breast milk blockage leading to a fever. Kim Yoon-ho immediately touches her forehead and feels that she is very hot. He quickly goes out to prepare some warm water for a compress to help cool her down. Not long after, Kim Yoon-ho returns to his sister-in-law's room with a towel and water. She lies back down on the bed, looking more settled. He wrings the water from the towel and places it on her forehead. Although his sister-in-law is drifting into a troubled sleep, she still exudes an allure that deeply distracts Kim Yoon-ho. Drawing him in, he reminds himself to stay calm, especially since his sister-in-law is sick, and he shouldn't be having such mesmerized thoughts about her. Kim Yoon-ho steps out of the room, bewildered by his own thoughts and how he could entertain such ideas about his sister-in-law. Inside the room, his sister-in-law is surprised by her body's response to the recent interactions. On the other side, Kim Yoon-ho is quite troubled, unable to understand why he can only think of his sister-in-law. He dismisses it as youthful folly and decides to go work out to distract himself. Upon entering the gym, Kim Yoon-ho is taken aback by the attractive young women working out there. He decides to sign up for a 3-month gym membership, and as he begins his warm-up, Bora, a fellow gym-goer, walks in. It turns out she also works out at the same gym. They greet each other warmly and motivate each other during their workout, with Bora saying they should meet up after finishing. As Kim Yoon-ho watches Bora and the trainer work out together, he notices some strange positions and suspects the trainer might be taking advantage of her. Feeling annoyed, Kim Yoon-ho decides not to intervene, focusing on his own workout, reasoning that he and Bora aren't close enough for him to get involved. Lost in thought, Bora suddenly approaches him, startling him, nearly causing him to drop his dumbbell. She invites him to eat together, and Kim Yoon-ho accepts her invitation. The moon is high, and the night has drawn its curtains as the street lights illuminate their surroundings. But when Kim Yoon-ho sees the food on the table, soju mixed with assorted vegetables, he is puzzled. Bora seems unbothered, remarking how the beautiful weather makes it perfect. Kim Yoon-ho agrees, saying they might as well drink a bit. The two clink glasses cheerfully, and soon the snacks and dishes on the table are nearly finished, with a few empty soju bottles as well. The atmosphere and mood between them are both excellent. After they both began to feel tipsy, Bora stood up to go to the restroom. However, she staggered after only a few steps and almost fell. Kim Yoon-ho quickly caught her, realizing that Bora had probably drunk too much. Leaning on Kim Yoon-ho's shoulder, she continued towards the restroom, with Kim reminding her to be careful because the floor was slippery. But Bora asked Kim Yoon-ho to help her inside. Kim felt it was inappropriate, but he ended up supporting her anyway. As they entered the restroom together, Bora complimented Kim Yoon-ho on his looks and kissed him, pushing him against the wall. Kim Yoon-ho was confused by Bora's actions but ended up reciprocating. Their moment was interrupted when a security guard called out, asking what they were doing. Kim Yoon-ho apologized profusely. Returning home, Kim Yoon-ho noticed that his brother's shoes were not at the door, leading him to conclude that his brother wouldn't be home again tonight. As he entered, he saw his sister-in-law's door was closed and quiet. He tiptoed back to his room, feeling ashamed to face his sister-in-law after the previous day's events. Lying in bed, Kim Yoon-ho thought about Bora and wondered how they would face each other the next day. He tossed and turned, restless. Unbeknownst to him, his sister-in-law was also awake in her room, thinking about him. Just as she was tossing and turning, her husband unexpectedly returned home, apologizing for being late due to work. She cheerfully said it was okay, and they quickly went to sleep. The next morning at the university, while Kim Yoon-ho was still sleepy, Bora arrived. However, instead of sitting next to Kim Yoon-ho as usual, she chose a different table. After class, Kim Yoon-ho took the initiative to speak to Bora first, and she responded. Kim Yoon-ho asked if Bora had gotten home safely the previous day, and she confirmed she had. The conversation ended there, with an awkward air lingering between them. They looked at each other silently. Bora asked if they had any classes together next. Kim Yoon-ho replied they did not, so Bora decided to leave first as she had another class to attend. Kim Yoon-ho was puzzled by the abruptness of her departure, especially considering the intensity of their interaction the previous night. Now, they seemed just like normal friends, which confused him even more. While the sister-in-law was out shopping, despite feeling tired, she hurried to get back home before her child woke up. During her outing, an older man offered to help her with her bags, but she politely declined, managing on her own and thanking him. However, unbeknownst to her, the man watched her leave with a lecherous expression. Back at home, she nursed her child, her thoughts drifting to her brother-in-law, Kim Yoon-ho. She speculated that he would continue to avoid her due to the awkward incident that had happened one night. By the afternoon, Kim Yoon-ho finished his classes, his mind still preoccupied with thoughts of Bora. He wondered if she had forgotten their intimate moment or if it was just the alcohol talking. As he mulled over these thoughts, he received a message from his sister-in-law asking if he was free to talk that evening. Although he had planned to go to the gym, he decided to return home instead. Sitting together on the sofa at home, there was an initial silence between them. Kim Yoon-ho was contemplating apologizing first, but his sister-in-law spoke up. She told him there was no need to avoid coming home late just to avoid her, explaining that it was her request for help that had led to the unintended situation. Kim Yoon-ho shook his head, explaining he had been going to the gym, not avoiding her. Upon hearing about the gym, she expressed a long-held desire to join him, especially since she wanted to lose the post-pregnancy weight. She suggested that Kim Yoon-ho could take her to the gym, and he agreed. However, Kim Yoon-ho was concerned about who would look after the child while they were at the gym. Fortunately, the sister-in-law had arranged for a neighbor in the apartment complex to babysit. At the gym, although Bora was working out, she seemed distracted, possibly missing Kim Yoon-ho. Meanwhile, the trainer eyed Bora's physique with a plan in mind. When Kim Yoon-ho and his sister-in-law arrived, the trainer was immediately captivated by her beauty. He began to introduce a personal training package to her. But when she turned to consult Kim Yoon-ho, he suggested he could teach her the basics himself. The incident at the gym left the trainer feeling irritated after Kim Yoon-ho expressed his intention to personally train his sister-in-law. As Kim Yoon-ho and his sister-in-law began their workout together, she struggled a bit with the exercises since it had been a long time since her last serious workout. The trainer, noticing this, couldn't help but stare at her with lustful eyes, which Kim Yoon-ho noticed but chose to ignore for the moment, focusing on helping his sister-in-law. On the other side of the gym, Bora watched them, feeling slightly uncomfortable and wondering if the woman with Kim Yoon-ho was his girlfriend. Neither Kim Yoon-ho nor his sister-in-law was aware of Bora's thoughts. They were just focused on their training. During the session, the sister-in-law's old workout clothes, which were quite tight, unfortunately ripped, causing her to sit down on the floor in embarrassment to cover up. Kim Yoon-ho was momentarily stunned, but Bora quickly approached and offered her jacket to cover the sister-in-law. Together, Bora and Yoon-ho helped his sister-in-law back to the changing room, with Bora urging Yoon-ho to hurry, which caused him to apologize for his stunned reaction. Bora then shifted the conversation, expressing her relief upon realizing that the woman with Kim Yoon-ho was actually his sister-in-law. After changing into new clothes, the sister-in-law emerged from the changing room, apologizing for the inconvenience and thanking Bora for her help, returning the borrowed jacket. The sister-in-law then observed Kim Yoon-ho and Bora together and felt unsure about their relationship until Kim Yoon-ho explained that Bora was a fellow student and they lived in the same building. Bora then greeted the sister-in-law with a polite bow, introducing herself again more formally. The sister-in-law was impressed by Bora's slim, youthful appearance, full of vitality and notably fit, seemingly a good match for Kim Yoon-ho. Feeling a bit self-conscious and tired, she suggested that they continue without her and decided to head home alone. As she walked alone, feeling slightly weary and with a slight headache, she unexpectedly ran into the same older man from the market. He remarked on her tired appearance, to which she politely responded that it was just a slight headache. She continued walking, thinking to herself that he seemed like a kind man, unaware that he was following her with a lecherous grin, hiding his true intentions. Back in the gym, Kim Yoon-ho was assisting Bora with her workout, standing close to each other as they moved through the exercises. After they finished their session, Bora suggested they go out for some mixed vegetables, a dish they both seemed to enjoy. Kim Yoon-ho agreed, as he had something he wanted to discuss with her. As they were enjoying their meal, Bora apologized, explaining that she had been confused that day and now felt unsure how to act, suggesting they pretend nothing had happened between them. She then playfully tugged at Kim Yoon-ho's cheek and asked if he would like to come over to her place, mentioning her mother wouldn't be home. After a while, Kim Yoon-ho actually entered Bora's house, and he is currently inside. Kim Yoon-ho does not know if anything happened between him and Bora today. He looks around Bora's room and realizes it is even more feminine than he thought. Soon after, Bora comes out looking cool and refreshed. Kim Yoon-ho asks her if he should take a shower since he also sweated a lot earlier. Bora sees that Kim Yoon-ho is a bit tense. He explains that this is his first time entering a girl's room. Bora blushes and says it's also the first time she has let someone else into her room. They shyly look at each other. Then Bora pulls Kim Yoonho a bit closer. Suddenly, as Kim Yoonho is lost in a kiss, Bora pulls away and turns around. Leaving him confused about what happened. Bora is upset, feeling like she was the only one initiating, and tells Kim Yoonho to go home. Hearing this, Kim Yoonho refuses, saying he also wants to stay. Night falls over the city, and Seon sits watching the clock. It's past midnight and Kim Yoonho hasn't returned, which worries her. However, she consoles herself, thinking he might be out somewhere, since Kim Yoonho is grown up now. Sighing, Seon suspects Kim Yoonho might be with Bora. As she walks and rubs her messy hair, Seon wonders why she can't sleep. The house is dark and quiet, with a faint light coming through the door. Kim Yoonho opens the door at 4 in the morning, surprised by the time. Feeling exhausted, he thinks he needs to sleep now. Startled to see Seon sitting in the living room, he quickly asks why she hasn't gone to bed. Seon gloomily asks if he has just come home. Yoonho bows his head and apologizes to Seon, who sighs and tells him to go to bed. In her room, Seon cries bitterly, puzzled by her own feelings, as she cares so much about Yoonho's affairs. In the classroom, Yoonho yawns from lack of sleep. Looking around for Bora, thinking she also slept late like him, he notices she isn't in class. Hearing a chair move, Bora greets Yoonho, saying he arrived quite early. Yoonho blushes and greets her back, complimenting her diligence. Bora replies that she even got up early for a walk. Yoonho can only admire her dedication. Hearing Bora say she only woke up recently, Yoonho hurriedly apologizes. But Bora says it's okay, because she is very happy about it. After class, Yoonho and Bora walk and talk together. They have finished their classes, and Yoonho nods when Bora mentions that next semester they will be taking a general education course together. Wondering whether he should hold Bora's hand, Yoonho decides to do so. Bora is slightly surprised by his action. Yoonho explains that he just wants to hold her hand and asks if she is okay with that. Blushing, Bora says she also wants that. As they walk, Yoonho admires Bora and thinks about wanting her to be his girlfriend. At the clinic, a silver-haired security guard listens quietly as the doctor instructs him. The doctor tells him that without continuing treatment soon, he will only have 6 months to live. Putting on his hat to leave, he says he will consider arranging his schedule soon for treatment. With a gloomy face as he leaves, he resolves to do something important before he dies. Yoonho feels truly happy as Bora sleeps soundly next to him. Getting off the bus, Bora quickly apologizes to Yoonho for falling asleep. Yoonho doesn't mind and just reminds Bora to be careful. Bora nods in agreement when Yoonho advises her to skip today's practice session because she looks very tired. But when Bora suggests they rest together, Yoonho feels shy. After a passionate kiss, Yoonho sits on the bed waiting for Bora to shower. Startled when Bora calls him back, Yoonho walks in, shocked by her suggestion that they shower together. Yoonho has arrived home. As he enters, he thinks that he is not too late, so his sister-in-law won't be upset. He encounters his brother coming home early, who is trying to put a child to sleep. His brother jokes that if he keeps coming home late, his sister-in-law will kick him out. Yoonho mentions that his sister-in-law has been very worried about him. They continue talking, and Yoonho learns that his brother will be going on a business trip the next day. In the bedroom, his sister-in-law has already fallen into a deep sleep. The next morning, at the security room, the guard appears to be contemplating something regarding Yoonho's house. He knows that Yoonho's brother came home last night and will be away for a while. He takes a drag of his cigarette and smiles sinisterly, apparently harboring ill intentions towards Yoonho's house. Observing through the camera, he sees Yoonho's brother's car leaving the garage. He remarks that he just needs to wait until Yoonho goes to school to make his move. Soon after, Yoonho happily walks out singing. The guard sees him and laughs aloud. Yoonho checks his phone for the time, sighing, while the guard sneakily watches him, wondering why he hasn't left yet. Just then, Bora arrives and Yoonho cheerfully greets her. They walk and chat happily. Watching them, the old guard feels a moment of joy. wanting Yoonho to continue enjoying himself. Then, the guard quickly grabs his backpack and room key card, determined to act even if it costs him his life. The guard finishes preparing and walks to the apartment building's entrance. He looks up and takes each step deliberately. He swipes his card to enter, presses the elevator button, and soon stands in front of Yoonho's apartment, pulling a dagger from his pocket. He reflects on using it again, indicating he has done wrong before. Swiping his card again, he easily enters the apartment, checking if anyone has spotted him before he proceeds cautiously inside. Knowing Yoonho's sister-in-law is in the shower, he hides. As she steps out, he attacks from behind, pressing the cold dagger to her neck. She trembles not from the cold, but from fear as he quickly covers her mouth, threatening her. Controlled and threatened, she can't act, but she recognizes his voice as the security guard. Seeing her so frightened, he feels a perverse pleasure and wants to harm her. However, the crying of her baby annoys him. Fearing for her child's safety, she is terrified. But the guard states he isn't interested in children and leads her to another room. Just as the guard is about to act, Yoonho returns in time. He pushes the guard away. Seeing the guard with a weapon, Yoonho is cautious and tries to stall for time. The guard moves to attack first, but Yoonho dodges and counters, thrown off by the punch. The guard gasps for air as he gets up, cursing himself for facing Yoonho head-on. Then, he threatens Yoonho's sister-in-law again, threatening to slash her face to control Yoonho. Yoonho, worried for his sister-in-law, ends up controlled by the guard. Yoonho watches the guard's vile actions towards his sister-in-law, helplessly, praying silently. At that moment, Bora rushes in with a frying pan in hand, striking the guard on the head so hard he falls to the ground bleeding. Exhausted by the force of her swing, she breathes heavily but doesn't forget to ask Yoonho if he is okay. Unfazed by Bora's arrival, the guard brazenly mocks her, asking what she is doing like a 3-year-old child. Bora responds with another painful hit. What follows are numerous heavy blows that leave the guard bruised and battered, accompanied by severe scolding. Yoonho is taken aback by Bora's strength, feeling shocked and somewhat fearful as he thinks about what the future holds with such a strong partner. After Bora's thorough beating, the guard is left with injuries all over his body. Once the guard is incapacitated, Bora quickly helps Yoonho's sister-in-law untie her bonds and checks on her well-being. At this moment, Yoonho feels grateful that he had called Bora. They flash back to earlier when they were holding hands and discussing their presentation for today. Bora asked if he was prepared, complaining about having to present first. But Yoonho only then realized the presentation was today. Bora teased him for being forgetful, reminding him it was at 3 o'clock. Looking at his phone, Yoonho told her he might have to go home because he didn't bring the prepared documents, asking her to go to school first. She instantly refused, saying there was still time, so they would go together. Yoonho quickly apologized and went up to get the documents. Upon entering his house, he wanted to announce his arrival as usual, but sensed something was off. Noticing the door was open and the baby crying loudly without any sign of his sister-in-law, he heard a strange noise in the room and thought there might be a burglar. He texted Bora to call the police, giving her the house number and the password to his home. Knowing he couldn't wait for the police, he kicked the door and stormed in. Back to the present, after being untied, Yoonho's first words were to thank Bora. She modestly replied it was nothing, and fortunately, he had texted her. Meanwhile, his sister-in-law was sobbing uncontrollably. Bora suggested that Yoonho comfort and take care of her. Bora then went outside to check if the police had arrived, leaving Yoonho to console his sister-in-law. He reassured her that everything would be all right and nothing more would happen. She broke down in tears, leaning on him to release her pent-up emotions. Soon after, the police arrived and took the guard away. Once again, Yoonho gratefully takes Bora's hand, causing her a bit of embarrassment. She then mentions she needs to go to school and advises him to go home as his sister-in-law might be very tired. They say their goodbyes. At home, his sister-in-law's face is grim after the terrifying incident. Yoonho assures her that the intruder has been caught and there won't be a second occurrence. She finally looks up to thank him, reporting through tears that she had already informed his brother about the burglary. She adds that his brother just reached his destination for work and would return the next day. Yoonho feels angry on her behalf, thinking no matter how busy, the situation was too much to handle. She reassures him that everything is now okay. Retiring to his room, Yoonho ponders over the day's events and his sister-in-law's distressed expression, feeling increasingly worried, though relieved that she seemed better by the evening. At midnight, his sister-in-law knocks on his door, asking to sleep with him because she is scared. The next morning, in a white seven-seater vehicle, Yoonho's brother drives home, sighing that he planned to finish work early, but it unexpectedly dragged on. He blames himself for not returning immediately upon receiving the news, feeling guilty towards his wife, Useo. He also feels fortunate that Useo and his brother Yoonho managed to catch the intruder. Thinking that everything would be all right with Yoonho at home, he yawns deeply and continues driving. Upon arriving at the apartment complex, he parks his car in the basement garage. Stepping out, he checks the time on his phone. It's nearly 6:30 am and wonders if they are still asleep. His first thought is to go up to the apartment to check on things. Through the window, the morning sunlight wakes Useo. Looking at the person beside her, she quietly compliments her handsome brother-in-law and blushes. Suddenly, she hears a noise and startles, wondering if her husband has returned. She wakes Yoonho, startling him. As he enters the house, Yoonho's brother calls for his wife, Useo. Walking step by step towards the bedroom, not finding his wife there, he wonders where she is gone. He calls out again. At that moment, Useo comes out of Yoonho's room, dressed and ready, which puzzles her husband. She explains that she was still anxious and scared because of the previous day's events. Hearing her words, her husband embraces her and apologizes, wishing he had returned sooner, and asks if she was very scared. She tells him it's okay because even though he was far away, he came back to her, and she's very grateful. But deep inside, she feels guilty. He then goes to Yoonho's room to check on him, observing that Yoonho also seems to have had a tough day. He finds Yoonho lying on the ground under a blanket, snoring away. Amused that Yoonho is still sleeping soundly at this hour, his wife advises him not to wake Yoonho since he went to bed very late the previous night. After they leave the room, Yoonho, who had been pretending to sleep, finally dares to open his eyes. He turns over, breathes a sigh of relief, and silently marvels at how close they came to a serious incident. Exhausted, he feels he can only sleep a bit more before he has to leave. Yoonho's brother soon leaves the house despite his wife suggesting he have breakfast first. Although he just got back, he must leave again. He apologizes to his wife, mentioning he has a seminar in the afternoon, and asks if she is really okay. Reassured by her affirmative response and comforted that Yoonho is there, he feels somewhat relieved. Yoonho, looking a bit pale, assures his brother not to worry, saying the criminal won't be back because he's now in prison. His brother ruffles Yoonho's hair like he's a child, praises him for being trustworthy, and thanks him, causing Yoonho to stammer shyly. Then, his brother leaves. They both remind him to be careful on the road. Once the door closes, they return to their own conversation. Yoonho mentions he needs to go to school and must get ready quickly. Useo calls him back, asking him to pretend yesterday never happened. She apologizes, feeling guilty, and he is also confused because he feels the same. She says she might have been crazy yesterday, so they should forget all about it, while tears stream down her face. Yoonho feels it shouldn't be this way, so he agrees with his sister-in-law. At school, after classes, Yoonho sits there, lost in thought, until Bora startles him. She inquires about the events of the previous day because she was very worried, and he hadn't replied to her messages. He apologizes, explaining he was busy with everything that happened. Bora, slightly irritated, tells Yoonho he should have made some time in the morning. He apologizes again, realizing his sister-in-law's ordeal had consumed all his attention. He then suggests getting lunch to make it up to her, but she proposes they skip lunch and go to the movies instead. Yoonho feels relieved, thinking a movie might help distract him from his family issues. They decide on a romantic film and head to the cinema, holding hands. The theater is almost empty, which Yoonho quietly notes with relief. Glancing at Bora, he realizes she enjoys this kind of movie. Outside, they catch their breath, laughing off the crazy experience. Bora jokingly remarks that they must be mad, and Yoonho agrees, feeling the thrill of their spontaneity. They continue their evening stroll hand in hand, enjoying the happiness blooming between them. The city lights glow around them, and the moon hangs high as they date into the late night. Returning home, Yoonho wonders if his sister-in-law is asleep. He enters quietly but finds her sitting on the living room sofa. He greets her, and she responds. Relieved that she seems better, Yoonho feels reassured. They exchange no further words, each lost in their own thoughts. Returning to the gym after a long absence, Kim Yoonho wonders if Bora will be there as she mentioned she might come. Walking around the gym, he spots Bora working out with a personal trainer who seems to be acting inappropriately with her. Frustrated, Yoonho approaches them to talk. Bora stops her session to speak with him. Yoonho suggests that she shouldn't train with this PT anymore, explaining that he noticed the trainer touching her inappropriately. Bora seems unfazed by this, more focused on the fact that Yoonho appears jealous. She teases him for being cute and assures him she knows what she's doing. At that moment, Yoonho's sister-in-law, Seon, also arrives at the gym, and the three of them greet each other. Yoonho offers to help Seon with her workout, but she declines and turns away, making Yoonho wonder if she's truly alright. The trainer then offers to help Seon, and she accepts. As Yoonho watches from a distance, angered by the trainer's demeaning behavior, Seon tries to reassure herself that her clothes won't tear like last time. Reflecting on a previous incident, Seon follows the trainer's instructions, struggling to position her hips as directed. Among other exercises, Yoonho, observing from afar, curses under his breath. Convinced the trainer is exploiting the situation, Bora, noticing Yoonho's discomfort, clings to his arm, encouraging him to focus and continue with his workout. The trainer, pleased to see Yoonho distracted with Bora, subtly shifts closer to Seon, who blushes at his proximity. After a while, the trainer holds Seon's legs during an exercise, making inappropriate comments while maintaining a lecherous gaze. When Seon expresses fatigue, he finally allows her to take a break. Smiling broadly, he asks Seon about her experience and whether she would like to sign up for a membership. Seon hesitates, but ultimately smiles and agrees. Bora then cheers Yoonho on, urging him to try one more set. Yoonho, feeling exhausted, begs to stop, but Bora insists. Stretching, Bora comments on how great the day has been, while Yoonho looks visibly worn out and complains. Yoonho asks Bora if they are heading home, but she smiles cryptically, suggesting they might be missing out on something else. Bora, playing with her hair, suggests that Yoonho should work out with her. He nods, slightly confused, agreeing to get the workout routine started right away. Bora then proposes they go back to his room instead. Embarrassed, Yoonho tactfully declines, pointing out that his sister-in-law and brother are at home. However, Bora insists, playfully arguing that she had once helped Seon and it should be fine. Meanwhile, Seon is at home, playing with Haeil, who soon falls asleep. She looks out the window, worried because Yoonho hasn't come home yet. Seated uncomfortably, she wonders why she feels so restless. Upon hearing the door, she smiles and greets Yoonho, but is startled to see Bora with him. Yoonho asks Bora to keep it down as she excitedly exclaims about the room. Bora jumps onto the bed, complimenting its comfort. Turning to Yoonho, she reminds him of the homework they need to do. Lazily, she suggests they take a break first. Inside, Seon feels a strange annoyance when Yoonho asks permission for Bora to come over to study. Preparing a beautiful plate of sliced pineapple, Seon decides to check on them to see if they are indeed studying. Just as she is about to enter, she hears Bora's loud voice, which triggers her imagination, and she impulsively turns off the lights in her mind and rushes into the room. Entering with her eyes shut, she is shocked to open them and find Yoonho massaging Bora. Apologizing for the intrusion and the misunderstanding, she quickly exits the room, embarrassed. Unable to face them, she leaves the door slightly open and slides the fruit plate through without entering again. Back in her room, Yoo Seo berates herself for being foolish, wiping away tears and puzzled why Yoonho mentioned studying, but they ended up massaging instead. Frustrated and saddened, she buries her face in her pillow. unsure why she feels so down but recognizing that she can't continue feeling this way. Deciding it's best to try to sleep, she turns off her lights. In Yoonho's room, the lights are still on. Bora is diligently typing away on her computer, focused on the task, while Yoonho appears to be writing but is somewhat distracted. Yoonho sighs, acknowledging that the task took more time than he anticipated, to which Bora responds with a stretch and a playful, "I told you so." She yawns deeply, expressing her exhaustion, and suggests they take a break. Yoonho agrees happily, and they each find a spot to rest. After a moment, Bora calls Yoonho over, asking why he's keeping his distance, clearly unhappy with the separation and demanding he come closer with a tone full of frustration. As Yoonho approaches, apologizing and asking if this is okay, Bora's mood lightens, and her smile blooms like spring flowers, puzzling Yoonho with her quick change of demeanor. Meanwhile, Yucio, stirred by the noise, leaves her room, wondering why Yoonho's friend hasn't left yet. Hearing more sounds, she suspects they might be massaging again. But unsure, she quietly opens the door to check. After a while, Yoonho notices the door slightly ajar, though he's sure he had closed it. Bora asks what's wrong, and he dismisses it with a hug, assuring her it's nothing. Bora confesses her affection for him, and he reciprocates. The next morning, as Yucio is nursing her baby, she sighs, admitting she couldn't sleep, haunted by the events of the previous night and wondering what to do about her feelings. In another scene, in a luxurious room, a woman tries to persuade a blonde man to stay longer, but he declines, citing an upcoming personal training session. The woman doesn't persist, instead throwing him a stack of money, saying she's giving more than before. He happily accepts, speculating that her husband's income must have increased. She confirms this, sharing that her husband was promoted to deputy general manager. He remarks that hard work leads to higher positions and leaves, while she agrees and waves goodbye, saying they'll meet again. Back at the gym, Yucio runs on a treadmill, determined to exhaust herself physically to avoid dwelling on her thoughts. The blonde man who previously encountered Yucio at the gym approaches her again, this time addressing her as a member. Yucio promptly greets him back and stops the treadmill. He informs her that there is a small gathering for their gym members later that day and asks if she will attend. Yucio, a bit puzzled, repeats his question about the meeting.